Hello. I was just checking to make sure everybody's in sync in the backstage. So we've got two lovely guests who are going to be joining us for this very weird, interesting world that we're going to be discussing. So Jay-Ann Lopez is going to be coming on first.
Hello. Hi.
And Teddy Pahagbia. So come on out, Teddy.
Hi, everyone.
This is going to be, I think, a completely insane chat just because it's such an insane topic. And I'm also hoping that we can bust some of the hype
100%.
around it. So can I just check, are there any journalists in this room? Raise your hand. Out yourself now. Good. Hello. Just to say that I think often if you're trying to research this topic, it's really difficult because there's so much discussion in the media that we want to try to get as real and grounded as we can, and we're very lucky to have two people who can help us do that. And we're also talking about this question of why it needs to include everyone, as opposed to, and we can discuss this, who it's including right now. So without further ado, if you two could introduce yourselves a bit in terms of describing your background and your perspective on this topic of the virtual world, and then we'll go into a bit of chat and then open to Q&A. So Jay-Ann, you first maybe?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jay-Ann Lopez. I'm the founder and CEO of Black Girl Gamers, which is a community-powered organization started in 2015. And we essentially want to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically also for Black women in the gaming industry. So we do that via different ways. We do that via consulting, events, talent brokering. So we have our own niche talent brokering offering in the organization. We do that via mentorship and workshops and content creation as well. We've been going for around 7 years, and we started as a Facebook group and grown into, as I mentioned, a community-powered organization that now boasts over 8,500 members globally. We've worked with a number of brands that are both gaming and non-gaming brands. So you can think of the Ubisofts, EA, Square Enix, but also think of your Netflixes, your makeup brands, for instance, Anastasia Beverly Hills, Maybelline, and we also do consulting as well. So making sure that game publishers and studios understand the demographic that they, one, make characters for, or two, are trying to market their game to. So that's us in a nutshell.
Wonderful, thank you. Teddy, give us your perspective on where you're coming from so that we have a better sense of your background.
Born in Africa, been raised and I've done my studies in Europe, France, and I've been working in the tech industry as a consultant for more than 20 years across industries, countries, government agencies. And I've launched my business, Black Pixel, 3 years ago already. It was in 2019. So Black Pixel is a digital innovation and metaverse consultancy. And we make the bridge, between technology and business. So literally what we do is that we advise brands and companies on how they can future-proof their business model using emerging technologies, to create new products, new services for the metaverse age. So, and, before all the NFT craze and the metaverse craze, I was preaching for years in the desert, and everybody was looking at me like I was this crazy guy, talking about sci-fi things, sci-fi movies, and all of this stuff. And since last years, the business has grown tremendously, and because of my early positioning into that space, I have the chance, I wouldn't even say it's a chance, it's a blessing, to have been listed as one of the most influential people into the metaverse. So, from a kid that I had to grow through a lot of hurdles and adversity to even just to succeed my career as an IT guy, so I can relate to what it means, inclusivity, diversity, and all of this stuff. So now, beside of my business, I advocate for the use of technology for inclusion, diversity, and more than that, for the greater good, for humanity. So, and business-wise, I mean, for the crazy guy, now my company advise one of the most iconic brands in the world that operate in the Web3 space now. I'm talking about, Vuitton, Nike, Converse, LVMH, Adidas as well. So yeah, this is what I am, this is what I do, and this is my story regarding my background.
Thank you. One of the things that I would like for us to kind of get to the bottom of is, does the metaverse exist already, or are we building it? And what's the role of gaming in that? Because a lot of people would just say the metaverse is just gaming, or that gaming is the gateway to the metaverse. Is the metaverse more than gaming?
Yeah.
So if we do nothing else in this talk, can we just at least establish that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start and then Teddy, you want to jump in afterwards. I know we talked about this before, and forgive me, I've got hay fever today, so I'm just literally sniffling every 5 minutes, so please forgive me. When you talk about the metaverse to gamers, I do think gaming is the predecessor to the metaverse of what we're looking to build, I would say. So you would have games like Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, and other games that have spaces where communities can meet and talk. Even with VR, and they had the Knuckles Sonic issue some time ago, but there were these spaces have been existing already in terms of having these micro markets where you can buy aesthetics for your characters, where you can create clubs, create communities, etc. So I will say that a lot of what people are getting excited about, gamers have already established, and I think that became really, really apparent in the pandemic, because even I was getting asked to talk about how to create community online when gamers have been doing this since TeamSpeak, Skype, when we were using those tools more and creating those communities. So I will say that the metaverse descends from what existed in gaming at the moment, but I will say it is going to go, I think, beyond what we currently have, but also incorporate gaming still. So it's morphing into something new from my perspective.
So what if, so I feel like saying the metaverse is hard to do without being a little self-conscious, because you feel like you're back in high school and everybody's talking about something and you're kind of like, I was late to this party, I have no idea what it is. So for anyone who's in that room, I want to be on your side and just sort of name that feeling and say how do I get to the metaverse? What would I do if I were, for instance, a 45-year-old who has no idea what this is?
Do you want to take that one? Go on.
Yeah, I would say that you don't have to do anything for that. The metaverse is coming for you.
It's coming for me.
Yeah.
Don't call us, we'll call you. So, for instance, if I wanted to go online or go into the metaverse with my teenage kid or something, or if I wanted to mint an NFT, for instance. So, if I'm playing Fortnite, am I already there?
In a
way. What does this mean? What am I buying?
In a sense, yes, I think we need to give a broader perspective to the metaverse. I mean, let's get back to the meaning of the word. Meta, which means something beyond, in between, that come with us, and that will still be there when we will be gone. This is what the prefix meta means. And then we have universe, which is, verse for universe. So what is this universe that comes with us, that is here with us, and that will still be left when we will be gone? Is the meta universe. So literally, it's not a virtual space. It's not a blockchain capabilities. It's the moment in time and history when the digital space, the digital world, digital tools and everything collide with the real world and merge to create a new reality. So literally, the metaverse is on slow release, and we already live in the metaverse. Our smartphones are an extension of who we are, of our identity, such as the avatar, in-game avatar, your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook profile, your IG profile. All of this, constitute different aspects of your personality, of your character. So, and all of this is entangled into your real life somehow. So this is just to give the broader perspective. To go back to the gaming industry, which is at the core of the concept, I would say the mainstream concept of the metaverse, because gaming represents these digital universes when communities aggregate. I mean, you can find, people have built their own families, talking about friends, the closest one to them. Maybe sometime closer for them than the neighborhood, and they recreate what we do in real life. They socialize, they interact, they even create economic, dynamics and all of these things. That is some kind of a replica of how human society is and how we function out as the communities. And this is what observing what is happening and what happened, already in the gaming industry. It's a good indicator of what can happen when we bring, I would say, a little bit of real life into the digital space and bring the digital space into real life.
So it sounds quite philosophical. So say that there's somebody here in this audience who's on Twitter, and I've never met them in person, but suddenly we meet here at CogX, and I'm like, oh, hey, because I'm like at Harebrain on Twitter, and people might not know me, but now we're here, and perhaps you had followed me before on Twitter, or I had followed you. Is that the fact that we've had a relationship, we've shared things on Twitter, perhaps even in our direct messages, like we've actually started to talk together and work together, but we've never met in real life. Is that part of the philosophical concept of the metaverse, or is it something more than that? Because I think people can get that.
Yeah.
But how is that any different from just like you have a colleague in Ohio that you've only ever spoken to on the phone or email, right? Like it's different forms of technology. It's not using virtual reality or augmented reality. It's just using email on the phone or Skype or Zoom. But you still haven't met. You're only meeting via technology platform. So if you had to get really specific, why is Mark Zuckerberg, when he's talking about launching and renaming his company's Meta, why is he sort of selling it like you can have meetings with your friends and colleagues where you're all little video game characters?
So if you take Black Girl Gamers, for instance, I mentioned we have like 8,500 members. I have not met all of them. 100%, a lot of them are actually in the States. And we facilitated and created this community via platforms like Discord or Facebook groups, etc. And I think from our perspective and like the gaming perspective, it's building on that to bring the augmented reality to facilitate the connection more.
Right.
That's from my perspective of what I think the metaverse will be. So, for instance, there are a lot of smaller businesses, even women-owned businesses, which I really love, creating shop fronts for brands like Charlotte Tilbury, Mary Kay, where you can go to these shop fronts digitally via your headset and try on products, etc. So it's developing on the experience of you going to a website, using an app. It's developing on that and using augmented reality, virtual reality to bring you merge the physical and the augmented together.
Do you need a headset to go to the metaverse?
I would say, to best experience it, I would say, yeah, from my perspective.
Okay.
Would you say that?
Yeah, definitely, and you are right. It's not just about using goggles, virtual headset and all of that. You can use your smartphone and have access to a construct, which is not a physical one.
Yeah.
But you can literally see it using a medium, right? So this is what it is. Even here in this room, we could have, we could have screens everywhere, just pushing the button and just being projected, propelled onto Mars or, the Caribbean or whatever, So this is a metaverse experience somehow. So it's not just about the Google. We have to see it from a broader perspective when we enter into the matrix somehow, because we don't go online, we go into the metaverse. So we can go into the metaverse using our avatars into a virtual space, gaming, virtual world like Sandbox, Roblox, Decentraland, etc. Or we can go into the metaverse by using the headset and all of that, or we can go to it using our smartphone in augmented reality. So anything that can propel us into a digital construct where we can feel immersed somehow, it's a metaverse concept.
It's building on the concept of connectability and community, essentially, in my opinion. And yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that we're talking about here is, why it needs to include everyone. So can we talk about who's building it? I have mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, obviously, but I'm sure there's more than just this one CEO founder. Is it bottom up? Is it top down? Is it networked? Are there certain countries that are leading the way? Is it all private sector driven? Is government involved in any way? So who's building it, and who's not building it, right? Who's around the table and who isn't? And why does that matter?
Ooh, well, it's difficult because I think, obviously there's more than one. From my perspective, there needs to be a thought about inclusion in general. So for instance, with Black Girl Gamers, we've done workshops with Meta to ensure that Black women get the opportunity to speak to leaders building this space, and if they want to get involved with AR, VR, that's really important. And then the workshops went very, very well. It's a mentorship program. I see the metaverse at the moment as a collection of decentralized places where everyone's building theirs, some obviously bigger at the moment because they've got more money, but everyone's trying to build their own section. And it's kind of like if you go on the internet, who really owns the internet? You have your website, but then you can also go to another website which is owned by somebody else. And that's how I, at the moment, see the metaverse. So for instance, the other day there was Decentraland, they had a fashion show. And that's an area that is not connected to someone else's version of the metaverse. So yes, there's more than one company building their thing. And it looks different to different companies at the moment. I don't know whether it's going to be centralized. It's quite new at the moment. I think Teddy can speak a bit more about what that looks like, because I would be cautious of centralization, in my opinion.
Sorry. It's a great question. Thank you, Stephanie, for this. It's not top down, bottom up, side to side. It's volumetric, the approach. It needs to be built by everybody. Because what we are talking about, when we advise brands at Black Pixel to enter into the metaverse age, we are not saying entering into the metaverse age. So you have to think about your company, your brand, like an experience, a construct, a world by itself. How would you design that world? And how this world would be a more authentic representation of what your brand is in terms of DNA, in terms of core value, in terms of positioning and everything. So now that it's not just about a flat website, a flat e-commerce website, it's the world. Whether you can access this world, this environment using virtual reality or augmented reality or whatever physical mechanism that can propel your audience into another space, how would you design it? Like the desert? Like the beach? How would this environment would reflect the core values, the identity, the DNA of your brand? Okay? And I would say, the evolution of the chatbot that is on your website to guide the visitor on your website, it will be an avatar in a more immersive space. This avatar, will it be Black, Asian, Caucasian? What language will it speak? And all of this participate in building the emotion, the feeling, and the interaction that you will have with it's not even customers no more, because you are into your world. It's your citizens, your community. So how would you define that? So it's complex. And just as Jay mentioned, we'll have different spaces. We have to understand that what is the internet? Internet stands for interconnected networks. We tend to forget that. So it's an intangible space built on an interconnection, interoperability, just as you mentioned, between different resources, content, etc., and people can navigate from website to website. In the metaverse age, we will navigate from construct to construct, from experiences to experiences, from world to worlds. So it will be built by everybody. Now the question is, we will hold the keys for your identity to enter into that digital space. We all have internet service provider. So if the cat, we don't have access to the internet no more. So this is the difference between Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3, because Web 3 is the infrastructure layer of the metaverse. We build the metaverse on top of it. Exactly. So Web 1, totally decentralized, proprietary resources, and you have to have as many identities, username, password, as needed to access different resources. Web 2 is more socialized. This is I would say, the dominant era of social media. So with just one account, it could be your Facebook account or your Google account, you can access literally anything on the internet, everything. And now, Web 3 is that your wallet is your passport to the metaverse.
Your digital wallet.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because your identity is stored in your wallet, and everything you will own in terms of digital asset or real life asset, the receipts, will be stored in your wallet. So the question is, who will build this infrastructure to onboard all of us into the metaverse, not in terms of experience, but in terms of gateway? And this is what is at stake with the big techs right now. This is what, Meta and all of the other companies are fighting for.
And how does that work with government pushes? We're in a country right now where the government is very keen to have us having a digital identity. And this raises all sorts of questions of, yes, it is more convenient if you wish to log in on various websites with your Facebook or Google, but you're also being tracked the entire way through by those companies, and not everybody's okay with that, right? Some people want their privacy. So is the metaverse or metaverses going to be something that's inherently surveillanced, if for lack of a better word? Like, can you have privacy in the metaverse?
Well, you look at gaming. I don't know about metaverse, but you look at gaming, you have people make anonymous profiles all the time.
Yeah, so can you have an anonymous profile if you have a digital wallet that's got your ID that you're taking around? Like, can you encrypt it or?
For those familiar with the history of crypto,
Yeah.
why did Vitalik build Ethereum? Vitalik is a gamer, and his identity was erased overnight by the company that made the game. And he was like, okay, I need to solve this. And this is why he built Ethereum with his original team. So it's really important. Identity in the digital space is everything, from gaming to access resources, social media, and all of that. So Web3 wants to solve this by giving back the power to the people to own their own identity. So now government have their words to say about it. And the thing is, technology is moving so fast,
Regulators
that
can't keep up.
exactly, regulation is always behind. We haven't solved some issues with Web 2 already. And we have seen that with everything that happened with Facebook, data breach, and all of these things. And now we are moving to another thing, which is even more impactful. So it's one of the concerns of the larger metaverse community globally, to onboard politics and government into, regulating this space, because we have to protect our identities into the digital space.
Yeah, and make sure that they can't be stolen. The BBC's got a really
Exactly.
interesting article on today about digital twins. But if you haven't had a chance, it might be fun to look it up, because it's this concept of, it's sort of my fantasy in one way, but also my nightmare, which is like, what if I went to sleep, or I just decided to go and have a nice day outside in this beautiful weather, but my digital twin was answering my emails for me and scheduling stuff, and like, I don't know, probably not calling my mom. I should do that for real, but I'm on the phone with her outside.
Amazing.
No, that digital twin is just doing admin. And when I'm asleep, is it working for me overnight? But then, and again, this sounds very sci-fi, and I'm not, maybe for all I know, this will happen. Digital twins have been more used to like model cities, so that you could like experiment with the effect of climate change in London. So you would, obviously not do that stuff on the real London, you would do it in your model. So it just becomes interesting and abstract. And I guess the question I would have is, what if we talk about, emerging worlds need to include everyone, but what if there are people who are just like, I want out, like I'm tapping out, I don't want to be in the metaverse, I'm already online too much, I want to be outside or with my kids or like swimming. What is that going to mean? Can you also opt out of this, or will we be sucked in?
I would look at everyday life right now and say, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think with everyday life, everyone who doesn't have social media in here.
Here we are.
Yeah. It's like the freedom to be human, right? Like, can you? But then there's also, this is a self-selecting group. If you're at CogX on a Monday, you're interested. But like, there's also vast parts of the world where people are not online at all. So there becomes like, we've already seen digital exclusion in previous iterations of technology and existing today. That just becomes, I guess, another question is, who is the metaverse or metaverses? Who is it for? Who is it for, and what is it for?
Well, I can only take it from the perspective of gaming, but there are platforms where, for instance, there's a company called Unity that builds gaming development software, and you can download that for free. So I think there would be, for the next iteration of digitalization, there would need to be some versions of that for allowing people if they have the resources, ideally they would, and hopefully the resources wouldn't be too access heavy, to create their own versions of the metaverse. Whether we get there is another thing, but I think with platforms like stuff like that, like an example, like taking Unity as a parallel and having a version of that for the metaverse and the next stage, that would help access everywhere. Because if you're looking at digitalization, they say in 2030, majority of gamers are going to be people of color in general. So that's just how it's going to be, and that's increasing more and more and more. So if we're going
Why is that? That sounds really interesting.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Because access to software, cloud gaming is going to make it more accessible for everyone. Right. So you can game on your phone, on a screen. Microsoft and Xbox are at the forefront of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So lessening the need for hardware and having that upfront heavy cost to access gaming and games in general. So that's, and also access to the internet. There's projects to build more pipelines around, I know, for the African continent in general. So that's why more access is going to be happening. The metaverse would have to see like how that pans out in general.
And I guess the question, so we talked a little bit about the geography of technology here, and you just mentioned Africa. And with Teddy here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Some of the problems with technology have been, I think it's safe to say, the dominance of Silicon Valley in a certain point of view and demographic that dominates in that area. And also, very American interpretations of freedom of expression over the First Amendment that don't necessarily apply in the rest of the world, or could actually be quite dangerous in certain contexts. You mentioned access to different languages, and I love this idea of, I don't personally like chatbots, but maybe I would like them more if I could configure one that worked with me better. I'm always like, I want to talk to a human. Put a human on, please. Human now. Human, thank you. So I'm like an absolute nightmare technologist, because I always go for the person, probably because I just enjoy the chat. But maybe if the chat was better and you could do it and be like, oh, I'm going to practice my French while I'm doing it or something. But I guess, joking aside, there is this problem at the moment that people funding tech, people building tech, and a lot of the people still using some of the more emerging technologies are a smaller group. And I guess the question would be, we didn't do inclusion very well for Web 1 and Web 2. What do you guys think we need to do to make Web 3 more inclusive in every sense?
Jay touched a very important point, was to make the tools more easier. Not everybody right now can make a website, and the website is, social media is here. We have all our profile on IG and all of that. But if you want to go further, you need to build your own website. That will be the repository of, what you can share with the world. So the question is, now that we are moving to something else that will be more immersive, the tools have to be accessible for everybody to build their own space, their own construct. So instead of telling you my mind, I'd rather build it and bring you into it so you can experience what is going on in my head somehow. This is what is at stake. So, and to go back to your question, it's very crucial. You're talking about the funding, the innovators, and all of that. More than ever, it's crucial to make sure that we are inclusive and diverse. Why? Because the two goes along, right? The two goes together. So when we have a certain group of people sitting at the table and they all look the same, they all have the same paradigm, all thinking the same, what they will build will look like them. So it won't be inclusive. It won't be diverse. And just look at the history of the internet. I remember 25, 30 years ago, people were like, small businesses, even big businesses were like, what? Selling things on the internet? This is a waste of time. We have, our retail network, which is working fine. And we don't need that. It doesn't work. See, now, if you don't have access to the internet, excuse my French, you fucked up. Literally. So now that we are building the next iteration of that means that people that don't have access to the internet today, they are left behind. They are out of the world, what is happening in terms of wealth creation, in terms of just, to exist as a human being. Literally, imagine not having access to the internet. Impossible. I can't even imagine that. So we are now building the next iteration of that. We have to make sure that everybody is included. So there is no answer to that. The solution is, I'm African, okay? I'm coming from one of the largest and ancient people from Africa, the Bantu people. And in our paradigm, the ones who are destined to rule, we raise them through hardship. Even sometimes, if needed, humiliation. Because they have to get rid of their ego because they will be the one destined to rule. And ruling is not about applying your will, your power, your authority upon your people. It's about making sure that everybody is okay. This is why this power has been granted to you, to take care of your people and the territory upon your responsibility. Let me quote Sam Raimi, Spider-Man, because I'm a nerd as well. With great power comes great responsibilities. So the solution is it's not a matter of the weak to become stronger, it's the matter of the stronger to make sure that the weak is okay. This is what is on the table, and this is what we have to solve. And everybody involved into building this new world has to take their responsibilities.
I think it also comes down to the people who are already in power learning that they are not okay. They're not enough. For the future, they're not enough in terms of they need to also mentor people who look like me, who look like Teddy, to take their position. You can't expect the world to be okay with the same people running everything all the time. It's not going to work. And for instance, with my organization and bringing things back to the metaverse, these brands, now they're creating these constructs, they need to have ethoses, they need to have rules and conduct. You cannot allow racist things to happen in your space. I run a space of black women and I still don't allow them to discriminate against each other. And that's enforced by the fact that you're coming into this space, you have to abide by these rules. They need to lead with that in mind. And unfortunately, it's been the nature of the world where they haven't led with those kind of strategies in mind. They don't lead with, I'm going to create this space and make it diverse and representative first, and then create the brand. And so now they are playing catch up with recruitment issues, with the fact that they haven't got enough black, Asian, non-white people at top of funnel. And that's part of the problem. So now we're, in general, a lot of companies, especially, I can only speak to gaming companies at the moment, but gaming companies are coming to us to ask about, how do we diversify our recruitment? Because they know for the next stage of their business, now we have social media, we're going to be vocal about the fact that you haven't included us now.
Yep.
And that goes for the metaverse too. And I think it will be an interesting scenario when companies don't have inclusive spaces, but people who are not included can show up digitally in the space. And what that looks like in the metaverse, where you're actually witnessing this digital discrimination. And I think, there's a lot to be done around that. But like I said, recruiting, inclusive marketing, and understanding that when you create a physical construct, digital construct, like I've done, you have to have rules and things in place before you even think about capitalizing off of that space. So like shop fronts for like your brand partners, as I mentioned, Charlotte Tilbury, don't think about creating a shop if you're going to have an open space where people can join and they can come in and say something that's going to affect your other customers that might meet digitally in this space. So there's so much to be done. Like I said, we haven't fixed the problems with Web 2 yet. And I think moving forward, we have this habit of moving very fast, and not sitting down and thinking, maybe we should fix the recruitment problem. Maybe we should check, okay, we don't have a diverse team of builders. Can we mentor for the next stage? Because not everyone's going to have the skills, because we know that there's a lack of accessibility. Maybe we can hire those that do have the skills at the moment, but if there's a less number of them, how do we create more?
To grow them.
And we still haven't fixed that issue yet.
I'm just mindful of the flashing, exciting clock in front of me, and that there might be people
catching my eye for this whole talk.
Because I'm completely gripped by what you were both saying, but I want to make sure that if anyone's got any questions, you have an opportunity to pose them. So is there someone in the back with a microphone or anything? Yes? Cool. Shall we just go straight into Q&A?
Hello. So what's the protocol? Stand up or?
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Do a little dance. Hi, thank you both so much, or all three of you so much for this. I have a strategic question for you. So looking at national strategies here, central government in the past 6-ish months has published strategies on net zero, cybersecurity, digital skills, digital strategies, roadmaps. There was the Leveling Up white paper, and there's shared prosperity fund. So all of this is around investment. When you're thinking about the metaverse in the context of national priorities, what do you think are the first steps for regions that are not already thinking in the metaverse? To get them thinking holistically and inclusively around these other strategies as well, so that it's not multiple things moving in different directions, but rather the volumetric, I think was the word you used, a volumetric expansion.
Great question.
Yeah, it is a good question. I'll default to Teddy on this one first.
With the internet, we have seen the rise of the largest companies in human history, right? They literally control everything. They're more powerful than countries. The question, government, countries, and even her citizens, we have to ask ourselves is, do we want that to go further? Apple, it took 40 years for Apple to go from 0 to 1 trillion. It took them only 4 years to go from 1 trillion to 3 trillion. This is the kind of acceleration we are seeing in the tech space. And it won't slow down. By the way, it's speeding up, right? So we have this larger and larger corporation that we call the big techs. We can literally, if Facebook was a country, it would be the biggest country on the planet. 3 billion people. They can provide anything for, having access to knowledge, digital schools, public services, healthcare, banking, everything. So governments, they have to understand that in the near future, if not already now, they have to compete toe-to-toe with, I would say, private companies already. This is the thing. So they have to really to step up the game and to think holistic, right? Because if not, Uber, which is the largest transportation company in the world, has no assets. They don't own any vehicles, but still, they're the biggest transportation company with a market cap of 70 billion. America Online, 17. billion. See the difference? And the barrier to entry to an airline company into the transportation industry, it's the operating cost and buying the planes, and we are talking about hundreds of millions. They cannot compete with a software company. And the same thing will happen to governments and public services. They have the infrastructure, they own the infrastructure, but it's not enough. They have to step up and to make sure that they can deliver services just as good that tech companies can deliver in the same industry. So we are talking about healthcare, education, and all of these things. So if they don't think holistic and try to improve, and I would say think about productivity, efficiency, and to make sure that they operate at the best level that they can do, they will be Uberized. This is how important it is.
I've got kind of a two-parter. So like the first part, half of me. Okay, firstly, that there's, you're talking about like how we need to include everyone as we transition forward into a new technological age, but there's a pretty big barrier of entry, which is technological costs, and actual hardware, bandwidth, in order to access on stream online information. And like you were saying, there are solutions, and Microsoft are pioneering, but that requires a subscription to Microsoft, and basically like subscribing to a large corporate entity again, like Instagram does. And we know how that narrative goes. You sacrifice basically who you are. Like you lose your I listened to what you're saying about working with Louis Vuitton and like what they see as their space. But like, do you believe that it will, like this metaverse will come, to me it just seems like a hyper exaggeration of Web 2.0, and like the greats getting better and the worst getting even worse.
Even worse.
Yeah. Like, and how do you stop, what are you putting in place, like when you're speaking to these companies, to stop you from saying, I want to stop the division, like I want less polarization, more inclusivity? Is it working with the bigger companies, or is there a solution that is decentralized? I hate to throw about buzzwords, but decentralized, like away from these like governments, as you put it.
Who wants to take? You want to go first?
Yeah.
I can only speak from the gaming perspective, and it's not easy, like when you work with a community that has those issues that you're talking about, right? The issue with access to hardware, access to funds to even get the hardware and that's why with us, with the companies that we work with, we'll make sure that we'll do mentorship programs. We'll get the companies to send out the tech to them. Like, you need to be the bridge, and I don't expect to change the world in a day, but I can expect to make things easier for certain people that are in my care. So again, sending them the tech, giving them free workshops that they can access again to learn the code, to learn so that they can better themselves or get this skill. And you teach someone a skill, you're good. Sometimes giving them the equipment isn't just it, like you need to have the skill. And it is difficult. I think people need to be a bit more vocal, challenge the industry. That's how I got where I am today. I'm not, I didn't grow up in wealth either. I grew up with a single mum. I created a space and challenged these companies to understand that black women are being excluded from your company. Like in gaming, 5% of people working in gaming in the UK are black, and that has not changed within the last 2 years. So again, challenging what they think is progress, helping them change their strategies and be a part of that strategy so that at least you're delivering to the people that you want to deliver to. Because sometimes if you leave these companies to execute on their own strategy, you don't really know what impact they're having. So I think there is opportunity for other organizations like mine to bridge that gap and make sure impact is being had, and slowly but surely you can change the fact that access is an issue. I know, for instance, gaming companies like Ubisoft are doing courses now at Newcastle and offering bursaries and sponsorship opportunities, informing those processes to allow more people who are underprivileged or underrepresented to have access. It's a long journey. I don't have a succinct answer for you. I can only tell you what we do bit by bit to change that narrative and offer black women opportunities. So I know at least 200 black women have got interviews, and I think a handful have gotten jobs. And it's been hard to even get to that stat, let alone. But, you know, slowly but surely we're making a little bit of an impact. It's just difficult, really and truly.
She's absolutely right, bit by bit, step by step. It's a long journey, but we have to all, you know, be involved somehow. At
So
our
Rome
own
wasn't
level.
built in a day, and neither will the metaverse be.
Exactly.
I'm so sorry. I think we have to end, I think. I'm just checking just because of the time. I don't know if we're getting thrown out of the building. I would stay here all night. I'm just looking. Can we have like maybe one, two more questions? If they're fast, if they're tight, go for it. You and then you. And well, there's like 5 of you in 2 minutes, so go for it. Let's see what happens.
Let's go.
Worst chair ever.
Question, is inverted racism? Is there such a thing as inverted racism?
No.
And could there be?
No.
And if it was inverted racism, would it still be racism?
No. Until the power structure changes, there's no such thing. There's prejudice, but there's not inverted racism.
Person, and I was coming to a black person's job, and I was saying, look, can you hire me? And I got a no because I'm white. Is that racism?
Depends. That depends where you live, what the infrastructure
No, because
is
if
like.
it was the other way around, it would be racism, right?
Let me counteract
No.
you. 1 second. Let me counteract you.
Do you want me to reply
all good.
to that? Okay.
Global system. What you'd need to do is have 400 years of slavery flipped on its head to have white people at the bottom. Then have systematic racism excluding you from opportunities, healthcare, you need to be experimented on for gynecology. And all of these things, you've had to have your years of your children's heads being chopped off. These are major things that you can't invert just by the fact that a white person hasn't got a job by a black person. Is that prejudice? 100%. Should they be an issue there? Yes, but it's not racism. Racism includes systematic issues. That's different, completely different. And I want that to go into your head right now, because you might get in trouble saying that to somebody else, because that is not a really good question to ask, specifically a black person. You might want to go and read a little bit more in that area, because that is a very infuriating question.
And speaking of infuriating, this has to be our last question because I'm getting signs to genuinely cut, but I want to make sure that you get a chance.
Okay, no problem. I'm going to try and put it
Go for it.
succinctly. I like what you brought up earlier in terms of, is it actually including everyone? I understand why companies may want to appear like they're inclusive or appear like they care about diversity, but in actual fact, even, you know, when people are being socially responsible, at some point there was a profit incentive to do that, whether you believed in it or not. At the moment, people are trying to do that. So even if we get into certain industries, I know a lot of people, black people, that are in the tech industry, they are qualified, they get looked over for promotions, looked over for funding, have to train other people more junior than them, that then go on to take jobs higher than them. So, I mean, it's a very big problem. And I want to know how true you feel the movements are going to be now, or it literally has to be a decentralized system where nobody knows who anybody is, and it's remote. And that way you can take away any type of prejudice and kind of make a better world in that sense, because once two people see each other, if they still have that inclination, those things will still happen despite what the stats say.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Equity is a main thing for me. Equity, ownership, very important.
That's what I was going to say. Thank you both for doing this. Thank you all for doing this. And I've noticed both of you are CEOs of your own companies, and I think that looks like the only real way for us to move forward.
Certainly a very powerful and impressive way. I'm going to have to wrap it up, I'm afraid, or I honestly think somebody's going to come out with one of those hooks and pull us off stage. It's very scary what's happening behind the curtain. You have no idea.
I just want to say one word. You know, it's not just about black people, right?
Yeah,
it's about
100%.
all underserved community. Women, black people,
Oh, no, we have to
Asian
go.
people with disability, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for this panel.